Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome back to Final Fantasy II. Yes indeedy, we've finally arrived at the Mysidian Tower, ready to obtain the Ultima Tome, which will grant us Ultima power! So yeah, just use the crystal rods, and now we can begin. Wow, effects. But yeah, that pretty much opens our way in, and pretty much right into the thick of things. Except there's a vampire girl. She's trying to charm me. Yes, charm me. Vampire lady, I've fallen in love with you. You've given me a lobotomy. But yeah, I mean, to get back on salient topics, however, yeah, the Tower of Mysidia is pretty much like a multi-story gauntlet, sort of gate kept by a couple of Mysidian mages, so... I mean, again, whether or not these monsters were, you know, just sort of exploring the temple in hopes of getting the tome for the Emperor, or I suppose perhaps keeping it out of the hands of any resistance who might try and get it, is anyone's guess, really. But yeah, this temple serves to be more of a test for, you know, Firion, Maria, Guy, and Ricard, and I suppose anybody who's foolhardy enough to get it to this point, where, again, you know, if they're gonna collect the Ultimate Tome, the ultimate magic, the ultimate power of destruction, well, yeah, you better be prepared to swing, because we've got several Mysidian mages pretty much acting as, like, sort of like, set-level checkpoints in order for you to have, like, a bit of a pseudo-boss fight against, elemental Gygases. But again, you'll be seeing that as we get along, but, yeah, in the meantime, though, in terms of its overall dungeon structure, it's a bit middle of the road, really. I mean, again, it's not quite as annoying as, well, like, maybe one of, like, the tropical dungeon that we encountered before, one that was all incredibly twisty and had plenty of fooled you rooms, although, don't worry, there's still plenty of that in here, so... Yeah, one of the biggest problems that I was sort of approaching, and, you know, this part was pretty lengthy before editing settled in. It was up to about, like, an hour, 59 minutes, I think. But, lucky for you, I've cut it down to, well, 36, 37 minutes, so yeah, should be a lot less painful for you, although painful for me because I need to figure out about things to say in an area that's, to be completely honest, not quite as interesting as it should be, and considering the whole build-up with, you know, the Ultima Tome and, you know, Ultima as a spell, which, you know, again, akin to its name, I mean, again, it is meant to be the ultimate magic, and it does also make appearances in other Final Fantasy games where, well, it very much does live up to its name, but there is a bit of a trick with Ultima that the developers wanted to include, and, yeah, I won't exactly spoil or give the game away this time, but, yeah, there is a bit of a trick in terms of, Ultima's usage. I mean, in storyline context, it's meant to be, you know, something that's, you know, sealed hell / the underworld, and, you know, prevented the Emperor from, you know, gaining the powers of hell, and all that kind of malarkey that will pretty much prevent more monsters from spooling into the world. But yeah, Ultima is also a dangerous spell in and of itself, in that it's basically, well, something you can cast on your enemies and, yeah, cause ultimate destruction. Usually in other Final Fantasy games, but that's all I'll say about it for now. But, yeah, I suppose, part of the reason why I find the level design here to be a little bit, well, I mean, again, I don't want to say it's too bad while you're playing, but I mean, I suppose maybe the dungeon design, you know, with its constant, you know, monster closets and, you know, windy corridors would start to wear thin a little bit at this point. And I suppose, I'm not really too sure what to really think of it, really, because, I mean, again, this was still very much in, well, okay, not necessarily gaming's early days, because, I mean, I sort of characterize that between, like, the first and third generation of, well, you know, consoles, if we can call them that, like, you know, spanning from fucking, what is it, like, Atari through fucking, you know, NES Masters, well, actually, no, this would have been 4th generation, so, yeah, Atari 5200, I suppose. I'm not really too sure. I pretty much classify anything before the 4th generation of consoles, you know, that being NES Master System and what have you, to be very sort of, you know, dinosaur and prehistoric in some aspects, which might seem a little bit unfair because there are plenty of games on, like, you know, aged hardware that are still quite fun to play and addictive in their own right. It's just, well, I mean, it's just very simplistic if you've, you know, never taken a look at those sorts of games, but either way, what I was trying to say is that, in terms of trying to make some interesting design, or at least pepper these sorts of environments with things of intrigue without, you know, relying upon your basic gameplay loop that I suppose to some, and again, this might just be more of me either underestimating, you know, present-day audiences, or perhaps maybe just sort of thinking about it in modern terms, is that how exactly do you build up, you know, areas that are, you know, meant to be backed up with, you know, story and lore and intrigue that otherwise just sort of feel a wee bit paltry, really? Because, I mean, again, it isn't just classic NES games that do that, really. I mean, to use a bit of an example with Devil May Cry 3, the Temini Gru is also a subject of, well, it's something that's, you know, sort of built up and awed and, oh wow, it's the ultimate symbol of evil, but never really gets elaborated upon much, if at all, really. Just gets kind of a basic going over, and that's about it, really. The Tower of Mysidia is pretty much like that, really. It's there to guard the Ultima Tome, but, you know, it's too dangerous for anybody to use, and that's pretty much all you really get. I mean, it's... Again, there are monsters crawling all around. The Mysidians themselves, you know, protect the tome from being abused by anybody who manages to escape from, you know, that giant whale that swallows anybody with a crystal rod, or anybody who's managed to bypass the, you know, the mask puzzles, so... Yeah, I mean, there is, like, a lot of protection going for it. It's just, I don't know, I mean, it just sort of makes you wish that there was a little bit more going on in regards to, you know, why exactly was this temple set up? Was it responsible for, you know, casting the seal? And moreover, what exactly was the civilization's deal with hell, you know, prior to, you know, the whole Final Fantasy II adventure beginning, really? I'm sure there's probably some sort of explanation in the novelization, which usually does tend to contain a bit more. And I suppose maybe potentially the second draft of Final Fantasy II, what with including the Emperor's mother, you know, who was, you know, a fortune teller kind of lady, maybe probably would have had some sort of explanation for this. But I can't really say for certain, although it does, actually, you know what, I might save that bit of trivia for a wee bit later until we actually meet our big bad in question, because, yeah, I mean, in terms of story at this stage, like, I mean, both in a bit of a grandiose kind of way, and also in a bit of, like, a, well, I don't want to say milquetoast, but I suppose in a bit of a bizarre turn of events. Yeah, like, I mean, despite, you know, not even getting anywhere near close to the Emperor, you still hear a lot about, you know, a lot of what he's doing or what's happening as a result of his actions, so... Again, it is the mark of a pretty great villain that, you know, it does eventually build up your expectations of what the Emperor is like, and what he's achieved, really. It's... Well, I mean, again, it's just the sort of thing where, again, you don't really get to see as much of him as you would otherwise like, and there is a little bit more to him than that if you go by, you know, Soul of Rebirth or whatever, but... Yeah, sadly the Pixel Remaster doesn't really contain it, really. But I don't know, like, I mean, again, in terms of how they build up his threats, you know, the fact that we need the ultimate magic in order to defeat him, despite the fact that, you know, every victory point we score is, you know, something that he pretty much retaliates in kind, and almost always seems to have the upper hand no matter how hard we try. I don't know. It gives the Emperor a certain presence about himself that's, again, just... I mean, honestly, it does make him one of my favourite Final Fantasy villains, to be perfectly honest, of which, yeah, it's, it certainly makes him a very interesting kind of villain, really, in ways that, well, some Final Fantasy villains fall short of the mark.
You have made good progress, but you must defeat me if you wish to continue your ascent.
And this is what I was talking about before, with the Fire Gygus, and you'll encounter, you know, the Ice Gygus, then the Thunder Gygus, and then the fucking whatever Gygus. Yeah, that's pretty much the Mysidia mages, pretty much creating, like, checkpoint barriers for you to fight against these people. Again, use all your different magical powers, utilize elemental weaknesses, and you should be golden in taking them down, but... in any case, I suppose to while away the wee hours as we continue to talk back on Final Fantasy villains... I mean, yeah, I mean, compared to Final Fantasy 1 and 3, where, you know, Chaos and, well, you know, the Cloud of Darkness was very much just more of like a cosmic force of nature, really. I don't know. I mean, again, the Emperor does feel like I mean, not just a bit more of a tangible threat, but also a bit of an intelligent villain who, you know, has a level of, you know, tactics and brains behind him to keep one step ahead of the action. And in turn, like, I mean, again, despite the fact that he also has this, you fool, you think this is my final form kind of thing, I don't know, he still manages to maintain his sense of self, which is probably something that can be less said about the likes of, you know, Ultimecia or, you know, Sephiroth at the end, who's just like, oh, I will destroy the Earth and remake it because fucking Genova or whatever shit. or Kefka, who's just kind of batshit bonkers, or X-Death, who... Well, I mean, X-Death is kind of interesting in the sense that, well, we'll get to him when we get to Final Fantasy V, and, yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy IV was... Final Fantasy IV is a bit of a weird duck in that it kind of sidelines its villains by the time we get to the whole Lunarian Zeromus kind of plot point, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, to reiterate though, I don't think any of these games suffer or, you know, are benefited because of their villains, because, I mean, again, the stories work within their individual contexts. It's just that some villains are bizarrely, well... Excuse me. Yeah, some villains are just a bit more bizarrely implemented, for lack of a better phrase, but that's all I really have to say. Yeah, by the way, look out for these basilisks, because they can cast, you know, petrification spells, so, yeah, Ethan is away, and, poor Ricard. He's turned to stone. Oh, that poor gentleman. I shall drain you. But yeah, if you want to take care of these puppies, just, well, okay, drain works. But you can also end up using, like, a lot of lightning spells, and, yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote. Or better yet, use Osmos to drain all their MP and add it to yours, which, again, around this point in the game is immensely useful, because, I mean, at this stage, Ethers don't really do much of anything apart from restoring, like, I mean, I believe around about, like, 20 MP points, magic points, MUPs, as you will. So yeah, Osmos is pretty much the way to go. And, I mean, again, somewhat cruelly, I mean, if you want to improve your Osmos spell to the nth degree, you can actually pinch MP from your friends, and, well, I mean, again, it will leave them pretty short-changed for, you know, magic points, but by that same token, though, you improve your spellcasting, and, in turn, you know, taking from them and adding to your magic points if you're in a bit of a pinch and, you know, Firion needs a magic boost. But then again, that's also part of the reason why I wanted to, you know, upgrade, you know, Maria and give her a little bit more something to do, so... Well, I mean, again, I've already sort of, given her a boost in MP as is, but, yeah, she's pretty much a carrier horse for magic points that either Firion or Guy can use at their expense. I mean, again, Maria's mostly functioning as a warrior anyway, so... Yeah, she's our MP piggy bank. Oh no, it's a chimera, dude! Now they can't cast Blaze anymore! But not spell to use. We'll thap him dry and cast the Holy 13 on the motherfucker! Delicious. Now the chimera will never live again. Excuse me, my nose is a little bit stiffly because of dust and such. Allergies at my age? Ooh, perish the thought. But yeah, I suppose to once again go back on at least somewhat of a Final Fantasy VI topic, because I mean I did have some tangents sitting around here somewhere. Yeah, I mean, kind of speaking of Kefka, the one Final Fantasy villain that a lot of, you know, old heads of the series usually tend to goggle penis over, yeah, I kind of get the impression that some elements of Final Fantasy II, and indeed the Emperor himself, were eventually transferred over, you know, to Kefka. You know, I mean, not necessarily in terms of how he acts and behaves, you know, essentially being, well, a bit of a man-child, kind of driven mad and having delusions of godhood. Well, actually kind of sort of really, because I mean the Emperor isn't quite as, you know, but, I mean, the delusions and some of the powers, kind of familiar, really. I mean, again, like, I mean, consider what you've already seen in this game. I mean, the Dreadnought attack, you know, causing war and chaos with, you know, a lot of mages and such. I mean, again, there's actually one book in Mysidia that states that, again, with technological developments in the airship, that, yeah, who knows, the world of magic might become irrelevant, or could potentially lead the world to ruin, if you remember the last part, so... yeah, a bit of a whole thing with, like, the whole War of the Magi, you know, Magitech and all that kind of stuff, and, I mean, even a bit of a link to Final Fantasy X, really, with, you know, oh, the Machina, man, lick me boom boom, Yevon no Lakia, the Machina, said the Waka. I really gotta stop doing that voice, but then again, why did they give him a, well, what's the proper term for it? Why did they give Waka such a, Rastafarian voice, for lack of a better phrase? I know there's a better term for it, but I'm trying to think of one without being stereotypical. In today's vernacular-centric people, accusations, whatever. I don't know, but I mean, again, the salient point that I wanted to make is that, well, Yeah, I mean, it is quite interesting to see how Final Fantasy II did drip feed into a lot of other Final Fantasy games in ways that people might not have expected, really. I mean, that said, though, I mean, the Emperor is still pretty popular in Final Fantasy circles. I mean, so much so that, I mean, again, in terms of, like, Dissidia, he tends to get a fair bit of spotlight there. And, I mean, even in, you know, the Stranger in Paradise, you know, the dark and edgy Final Fantasy 1 retelling with the Grr, I am Jack Garland, I must kill chaos, fuck you, whatever kind of thing. I mean, I think it was, like, either a DLC or it was, like, an expansion pack that, had the Emperor featuring in through some sort of bizarro alternate universe Dissidia dimension-hopping bullshit. Yeah, I don't know. By the way, that was me using Death on the Ice Carcass just to see if it will work on, like, a boss encounter kind of scenario, and, well, I mean, again, I don't know if that technically counts as a boss, because usually Death doesn't really work on bosses, but, yeah, for that one it did, so, I mean, the Ice Carcass was pretty much like, I didn't get to do anything! He's very much the Spock Mandrill of his day. But yeah, I mean, to talk about anything else, a lot of the environments of the Mysidian Tower do also change depending on which Guardian you're going to be facing next, so... Yeah, I mean, it is... I mean, it's at least interesting a little bit more visually in that aspect, but... yeah, not really too much else to really say. And this is where a lot of the battles were cut out in terms of, yeah, because, I mean... Again, and to once again reiterate, for the sake of wasting more time, again, I'm pretty much only showing the battles that either have new encounters, or encounters which are at least interesting to, you know, spot, show off, fight, and make fights visually interesting, so, yeah. That's part of the reason why some stuff is staying in, other stuff is staying out, and, well, generally, we're just having to make peace with our lot in life. Fighting monsters, saving the world, and, yeah, just... generally being war orphans, scarred for life, and will probably never adjust to a normal existence. But then again, this is a fantasy universe, and is therefore probably subject to, you know, the same sorts of medieval fears and tribes like throwing stones at your own shadow, and dying of old age and fear at 24. I mean, even with magic, it's probably twice as dangerous, if not more so, than, well, what it probably would have been. Now, depending on how potent cure magic is, and how good potions are, I suppose. I mean, assuming that they're a little bit more potent than medicines of what we would have had during the medieval times or Middle Ages. I mean, again, there's only so much that, you know, leeches can do, and, well, I mean, honestly, like, I mean, even getting, like, a fucking rusty cut on a nail is pretty much a death sentence back then, so... yeah. Present-day Earth isn't really looking so bad, is it? You whingy little fucking bitch! Well, I mean, I say this, but I whinge about present-day Earth, but that's only because I'm here, not... anywhere else right now. Well, then again, it's all about where you live in your perspective, of course. Could be living here or living in a war zone where you could wake up dead tomorrow. What a funny turn of phrase, wake up dead. You can't wake up dead, because you're dead. And if you did wake up, you're a zombie. The zombie! Whatever, silliness aside though, well, yeah, we also have the imps. Basically demons that cast magic and, yeah, it can be a wee bit of a blighters, but once again, like, I mean, they do also have physical attacks, so, I mean, they're not completely prone if you decide to osmose or utilize, you know, sap to drain their MP, but, yeah, you can pretty much get by without taking too much damage from them. And, I mean, even if you do sap their MP away from them, they kind of get a little bit more cowardly anyway, so whether that was an intentionally programmed, you know, quirk into the gameplay, or at least the Pixel Remaster, I'm not too sure, but... I mean, either way, it's a nice attention to detail. If, again, you take away one of the enemy's, like, most offensive means of attacking you, then, you know, the only option is to run away or just deal paltry damage. I don't know. It's interesting to think about, but then again, given the era of NES gaming, I'm not really too sure what was an intentionally programmed sort of thing, and what was the programmers trying to make an interesting game based on systems they hadn't fully mastered yet, while at the same time also trying to work it into an RPG format that, well... I'm not really too sure how far developed RPGs were at this point, especially considering that Final Fantasy itself was still experimenting. Because, I mean, I'm still thinking about it, really. Like, I mean, comparing, you know, Dragon Quest, Phantasy Star, you know, Final Fantasy, among a plethora of other, you know, Western RPGs that were already out of the time as well, like, you know, Ultima or something like that. I mean, again, it was still a very experimental time for RPGs, so, yeah, I suppose there wasn't really much of a handbook apart from... well, the internal developers to see which ones would work and which ones wouldn't. I mean, after all, there's a bit of a reason why you don't hear about Naughty Dog's Mega Drive magnum opus, The Rings of Power. Well, apart from if you use a cheat code on the title screen to, get the picture of the naked woman, I suppose, but that's pretty much all that game's known for. But, anyway, onwards and upwards, I suppose. And to clear up a bit of a mistake I made in the previous part where we were stuck in a whale's arse. Yeah, it wasn't Job who was stuck in the whale in the, Bible chronology, it was actually Jonah, so, yeah, for anybody who pointed that out in the comments in the previous part, not to worry, I did learn from my mistake. Although, then again, this is being recorded at a point where I'm uploading part 1 of Final Fantasy II tomorrow, so then again, I've already corrected my mistake before you could even correct me in the timeline, so therefore, I knew what you were going to say before I already said it, unless you didn't say it, just to spite me, or just didn't really care to watch the video, in which case, I corrected myself to stop wasting time, to correct you from correcting me. I taste purple in my brain. But yeah, Jonah was pretty much the guy who was swallowed by a whale and was pretty much stuck in there until he repented for his sins, and I can't really remember what the fuck else happened. I pretty much just did like a wee bit of research on that, and that's pretty much it. But yeah, Jonah was whale swallow guy, Job was the guy that God fucked with purely for the sake of testing his faith, and ended up supremely fucking over his life by killing his loved ones, ruining his fucking livestock and, his fortune before eventually getting it back towards the end of his life. And despite the fact that he never really lost any faith, good lord, the fucking psychological ramifications of being toyed with by God is quite disturbing, really. Oh, well, then again, if we were to go by the, the Christian chronology of God, he's equal parts loving as he is, well, vengeful, I suppose. Again, you consider the whole flood with Noah's Ark. He was pretty much done with humanity, like in the early chapters of the Old Testament. So, yeah, it doesn't exactly speak highly of us. Kind of makes us feel like a failed experiment in a petri dish, to be honest. But oh well, nothing really to do now except continue to drain the lizard. But yeah, now we have Marlborough Terrors. Yeah, what exactly is different about them, I'm not really too sure. By the way, I never really encountered it in this run, and I'm mainly I might be thinking of later Final Fantasy games where they might have given them more attacks, but yeah, I seem to recall Marlboroughs having like a poison breath attack, where they can pretty much deal out massive damage. At least I seem to think about that. I remember one of my early playthroughs of Final Fantasy VIII turning out that way, where I think I attempted to attack the enemy a bit earlier on than I should have, and yeah, as a result, I pretty much got my ass completely whooped by a Marlboro. Didn't have a chance to smoke it. But yeah, a lot of what happened here was pretty much just sort of me skimming over a few aspects of, going in and out of these doors, because you wanna know what's inside a lot of these doors? Sweet fuck all, that'll waste your time. But I am showing them off to you to at least, give you, if you ever decide to play Final Fantasy II, a chance, because monsters that the developers are, they pretty much just sort of hide shite in here. But there is a reason why you want to go after that treasure chest, because apart from fighting 2 Godos and a partridge in a pear tree, that being the Devil Bloom, yeah, there is a reason why you want to go after it, and that's another ability that I'm going to refine to Bellissimo with Maria. So, yeah. Yeah, we get 2 pretty powerful abilities here, not just the Ultima Tome that you'll be seeing at the end of the part, but in turn also a nice ability for Maria, but what is it? You will have to wait and see. They have cast the haste, but we can cast the haste the faster. Or I'm pretty sure I just used stop, because, yeah. Once again, what haste does to you also happens to the enemy if they happen to possess the spell, so yeah, they're trying to get more hits and attacks in per turn, so yeah, if we just decide to use stop, well then that pretty much puts a kibosh on them having more turns, because they're frozen in time. Oh yes, I remember the time as we used stop 13. Time magic. I'm sure Luke's sword would be proud. No, probably not really. We need to be using cards and dice to attack our enemies. Which honestly does make me wonder how a gambler sort of character would play. Particularly if they happen to have like cards and dice as attacks or whatever. I don't know, it seems like a pretty interesting thing for a combat engine to experiment with, but Probably not gonna happen in this lifetime, unless the developer's curious enough. Just gonna continue with our typical swords and staves and whatever else, really. But in any case, now we have the Flare Tome. Now, Flare's a pretty powerful spell if you know your Final Fantasy history, really, because, yeah, it deals non-elemental damage, but is really powerful, especially against living things. But yeah, like a lot of other spells in the game, Flare, you do need to level up before it, really starts to dish out some of the damage, but, rest assured, it is still a very worthy spell to have in your arsenal, and one that I'm going to be upgrading with Maria, and, well, by the time we get to see it in action, it is fan-fucking-tastic, man. But yeah, I mean, I kind of decided a bit on the fly to give it to Maria, because I figured since, okay, I'm giving Firion Ultima, since he's pretty much our main spellcaster, yeah, I might as well just, test it out, allow Maria to show off what Flare's like. Okay, it's a little bit more sparks as opposed to fire at this point, but I think you get the idea. I mean, considering how the Flare spell usually goes in Final Fantasy, it does gradually get a little bit more beefier and powered up as you go on. I mean, casting stuff like, Mega Flare, which is an even more powerful variant of the spell. Seeing Bahamut also casts, I think, was it Giga Flare, or I might be thinking of Mega Flare itself? And then, of course, one of the most powerful Flare variants, Zeta Flare, casted by a completely unexpected character, Donald Duck. Although, then again, he tended to die as soon as he used it, so, poor Donald. He's ultra powerful, but he dies if he uses all this power. Oh dear. I mean, again, it's kind of disquieting to think about Donald Duck being one of the most powerful characters in the Square Enix universe. I mean, at the very least in the Kingdom Hearts realm. I think second only to one of the characters from Bravely Default, but I can't really know anything about that because I haven't played Bravely Default. But either way, Donald Duck being up there in the upper echelon of Square Enix mages and magic casters. Fucking crazy, man. But yeah, don't you worry, Flare will get more powerful as we continue to upgrade it, so... Yes, indeedy. As we continue with Haste X, yes, we can then layeth the smacketh down. And yeah, of course, Marlboros being, plant-based enemies, yeah, fire is pretty much the way to go, so, light them up. And, smoke them really good. Now, if you'll excuse me, I take a big black puff of my big dick art cigar. But no. That's not gonna happen anymore. I've quit smoking, and I only did so once more after that in my teenage years, as purely a gag for the Silent Hill Origins review, although, to be perfectly honest, if I can share a bit of an intimate Solidus-Skully secret, really, the cravings never really go away. Like, I mean, again, it's been years since I last, smoked, but, even today I still crave a cigarette. That's a bit disquieting, but I must use my will! I have the will of a warrior, but the body of a coward. So, I mean, it's basically meaning that, yeah, cigarettes are addictive, and, well, I mean, again, you won't get addicted from just one, in spite of what all those commercials will lead you to believe, but, yeah, I mean, prolonged use will eventually start to take its toll on you, and, well, let's just say that, yeah, it's not a good habit. Says Solidus-Skully, who indulges in several bad habits in his life, but, it's neither here nor there in this case. But now we have the Hourglass, which, yeah, I think is either there to cast Stop or Slow, I believe? Or that might be the Silk Web I'm thinking of. Yeah, Silk Web Slow, Hourglass Stop, at a random level, really. That also being one of the one-use items that you pretty much have at your disposal to, use in case one of your characters doesn't have any MP, and is attacked by monsters! And now we see a White Dragon. Yeah, there are more than a few, coloured variations of dragons all throughout here, really. Just a bit of a surprise encounter, really. Not really, anything too relevant to the plot, or, like, any kind of super boss or anything. But, I mean, again, it is at least a unique fight, so I figured I might as well show it off as we fight it. Now, not that we particularly get to see the White Dragon do much of, anything cool, I suppose, but, yeah. I don't know, it's a unique encounter. Figure we might as well show it off for posterity's sake and, yeah, continue to layeth the smackdown. 'Cause it can't hit what it can't see. But yeah, I mean, to kind of talk about it here, really, I mean, the only way you're really gonna find out what, enemy weaknesses are is, well, first of all, by fighting the enemy for yourself, and then looking them up in the bestiary, which you can find in the main menu. Which is, yeah, a bit of an oddity, really, because, I mean, again, for those of you who are more used to the Final Fantasy ability scan, it's nowhere to be seen in this game, so you're not really going to be getting any sort of enemy data, whatsoever, really, so... Yeah, that's a bit bogus, but... Yeah, it does also sort of require you to go on a bit of a scavenger hunt to complete the bestiary, which, I guess maybe for completion's sake and both for a trophy, if you're into that sort of thing, it might be worth it, but... Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really bother to go out of my way to enemy hunt outside of the, well, the one secret encounter enemy, by which I mean it's basically the closest thing to a super boss, which is, the Iron Giant, but you won't be seeing that for much later, so just stay tuned. But I mean, I'll say this much, again, even at level 3, you see that Maria's flare ability is slightly improving. Yes, you have been cursed. Although, then again, I don't know if enemies that are hidden in treasure boxes can flee, so... yeah, it's kind of curious. Can, again, can enemies flee if you use Curse on them, but they're triggered by, like, a treasure box activation? Or do they pretty much have to stand still until either you die or they die? Something to test on a future playthrough, I suppose. But then again, I suppose you're also waiting on a certain level of chance to really, like, deal damage, or waiting, like, a certain level of time for enemies to run away based on an invisible percentage meter that you can't really see. I mean, again, this was a little bit before the active time battle system came into play, where you could actively, have enemies change up their tactics on the fly, and, also see, like, the levels in which your characters need to recharge before you start playing as them again, so... Yeah, it's completely up in the air, I suppose. Good, oh, we finally won against the dragon, and we have a stylish black robe.
Oh yes, we'll be the talk of the town. They'll be like, oh god, there's that naughty boy Firion dressing in black, like an emo.
But don't worry, we only wear that black robe in case of emergency. Just like My Chemical Romance. Well, what a fucking dated joke. But then again, that's probably speaking more about my age, and, the sort of bands that were popular in, like, what, fucking 2006, 2008 or whatever, more than anything else. Back in the days when people used to remember Drowning Pool's music as, YouTube's audio sort music. I made myself sad. And speaking of making myself sad, listen to this. I've been here waiting for you, Firion. Though I've managed to reach the seal, the magic binding it appears to be extremely strong. I will concentrate every bit of power I have on the door. If it is enough, the seal should shatter. Everyone, stand back!
Minwu!
Go through the door. You must take Ultima. Do not grieve. This was my destiny. Minwu. Why does everybody I love die? But yeah, I mean, not to shit on the emotional moment, which I did decide to let play, because, Minwu was a real one. He's been with us since the adventure began, he was the one who healed our wounds, and... Yeah. There was actually a bit of a discrepancy between this and the original NES translation, actually, where, like, I mean, again, the door, in order, for you to access the Ultima Tome, pretty much required a sacrifice in order for people to access it as the ultimate and last and final defense system. You know, those who try and breach the door end up getting themselves killed in the process to try and break the spell, if they even can at all. Whereas in the original translation, it was meant to imply that, Minwu pretty much died because he was so emotionally, magically, and physically exhausted that his body just couldn't handle it. I mean, I suppose both interpretations are valid, I guess, but, yeah, I don't know. To me, it kind of makes a little bit more sense for, the door to require a bit of a sacrifice before getting in as, the ultimate prevention for people, trying to steal the Ultima Tome. I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's a way of preventing, greedy thieves or anything from getting in, but acquiesced, really. And yeah, this little crystal room.
Could this be a link to Fineth to Faneth 1 with the 4 elemental crystals?
Well, no, not really, but it's here, right in the center where we get the Ultima Tome. The ultimate magic. At last, we've obtained it. The magic is now Firion's, and you'll get to see it in action next time. So on that note, I am Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on the Final Fantasy II commentary, we make tracks back to Castle Finn, and finally, kick the ass of the evil Emperor. Catch you later.